Taylor Jackson, and I am the Director for South Carolina Logistics with the Council on Competitiveness. We are here today with Jim Newsome, President and CEO of the South Carolina Ports Authority. Jim, thanks so much for joining us today. How have you been?
Taylor, thanks for having me. I've been great. See a lot of familiar names on the list here. Probably one David Popowski that wants to bet me on the Georgia-Tennessee game, but we'll make that a separate transaction later. So fine, thank you.
Perfect. Yes, I think I'll be pulling for Tennessee this weekend as well. Today we will be discussing what's new with the port, the South Carolina Logistics 2020 Economic Impact Study, and we are looking forward toward the future of supply chain in South Carolina. If you have any questions, please utilize the chat function and we will answer all questions at the end. You guys are also welcome to utilize the speaker view instead of the grid view if able, and please keep yourself muted if possible. All right, so to kind of get us started, let's talk, Jim, if you could talk us through the new Hugh Leatherman terminal and also provide any updates on the improvements at the Wando terminal.
Sure, Taylor. So, I mean, the Leatherman terminal is significant in the sense that it's the first new container terminal built in the United States since 2009. The last terminal was in Jacksonville, the Tray Pack terminal. And it's significant at full build out. It's 2.4 million TEU of capacity, which is the same capacity as the Wando terminal. It's built in 3 phases. It's by no means cheap. It's almost $2 billion in costs. So it's a very expensive terminal for probably the most expensive terminal per acre built in the United States. As y'all in Charleston have seen, it is a dedicated access road to and from the terminal, so it will not have any adverse impacts in the city of North Charleston. We're waiting the cranes. We actually have 9 cranes total on order from ZPMC, and 5 of them are somewhere on the way, but between storms below the Cape of Good Hope and hurricanes and whatever, the 2 ships are making a very bad race to get here. So we think we'll have both ships here around the last 2 weeks in October, and then we'll have 25 RTGs. These cranes will have 169 feet of lift height, so they'll be our tallest cranes that we've ever built. And then so we'll be able, when phase 1 of the Leatherman terminal is open, with 1 berth to handle 4 14,000 TEU ships at one time, and up to 19,000 TEU ships. So the 169-foot cranes are able to handle 19,000 TEU ships. And what that means is, and we tested it on the CMA CGM Brazil, we're able to load over 9 high cube containers on deck and get a 10th tier. So that's pretty phenomenal. A lot of ports can't say that. The Wando terminal, I mean, you know, one of our biggest challenges, those of you that have heard me speak before, is that we're building a new terminal, and we decided we had to retrofit the Wando terminal about 5 or 6 years ago. So we've been doing that. We made great progress. We have revitalized the wharf. We've raised cranes. We bought new cranes. So by the end of next year, we'll have 15 cranes here of 155 feet of lift height. So we have gone really in 6 years from, I would say, being behind on infrastructure to being significantly ahead. And I think it's a great accomplishment and I'm very proud of our team. And I'm really proud of the maritime community, because I think it really gives us a great capability going forward.
Perfect. So I know you just mentioned the CMA CGM Brazil. So on that, can you give us an update on the harbor deepening project? Sure.
So, I mean, the biggest size ship we're seeing today is somewhere between a 13,200 and 15,000 TEU ship. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. That's actually that's the same ship in terms of length and width. The CMA CGM Brazil got its extra capacity by its height. It had 1 more tier on deck. But when we saw these ships coming all the way back to 2010, when I joined the port, we decided we needed to deepen our harbor. That's not an exercise for the faint of heart. I mean, I say it with respect. It's kind of is kind of a project that's set up for failure if you don't manage it well. So I'm proud to say that we will have done a deep draft navigation project with the Army Corps from start to finish in 12 years. And I'm here to tell you that's fast. I mean, in my life, that's not fast, but in the life of harbor deepening, it's really fast because some projects have taken up to 25 years. All the funding is in place. If you recall, the state put $300 million aside in 2012, which was really a catalyst to show the Corps that we were serious about realizing the project. And then the state gave us another $50 million loan because we had to sequence state money with federal money. But the federal government finalized the funding in the last fiscal year budget. So the project's fully funded. The last two contracts have been let by the Army Corps, and we're going to complete it in mid-2022. And one of the big remaining parts of the project is widening or expanding the Wando turning basin. That's a bit of a constraint today. It's 1,400 feet. We're going to expand it to 1,650 feet. Why is that important? Because one of these big ships is 1,204 feet long, and if you got a 160-foot wide ship at the dock, you do the math of that, it's less than 100 feet to turn, so it's pretty tight. So we're in great shape. Again, Barbara Melvin, my colleague, our chief operating officer, she managed this project very well with the Army Corps. I've had 7 lieutenant colonels in the Charleston district involved in this project by the time it's completed. So I've had 6 lieutenant colonels in 11 years, but they've all been good, and in the Charleston Corps District, they're phenomenal. I mean, Lisa Matheny, Brian Williams, the team, they really move this along very professionally.
Very good. Looking forward to that. Also on, making Charleston a little bit more competitive and the South Carolina in general, that'll lead us right into Inland Port Greer and Inland Port Dillon. Can you provide an update on that and how those 2 ramps are going?
Yeah, it certainly can. I mean, Inland Port Greer, it seems like it was eons ago when we thought about it, but it was an edgy concept really when we put it in place in 2013. I mean, we knew we had a base cargo in BMW, and we knew there were about 10 clients up there who could really make good use of it, but we didn't have any of those signed up. So we worked hard. I think it's proven its efficacy. It's did about 140,000 rail moves last year, which if you'd asked me, when we started, what would we achieve in 5 years, I would have said 100,000. So it's exceeded our expectations. And it certainly can do more because what I would say is unique about Inland Port Greer is it's probably 4 or 5 times bigger than any other port-owned inland port. I mean, I think Front Royal, Virginia maybe does 35,000, 40,000 containers. So the magnitude of this is really huge. And it's export dominant. So BMW exports more than they import. So we need import containers. We've been fortunate to land a few projects such as First Solar being one and Stanley Black & Decker. And we think this is a prime location for retail transload going forward. So we're really working on, the port is dependent on land, and we're working on cornering some land, hopefully up in that area where we can encourage some retail transload work. So I think the future's bright. I really see no reason it couldn't get to 200,000 rail lifts in a reasonable period of time. And because of that, we had the confidence to do Inland Port Dillon. It's a bit different in concept. I mean, as you know, it's right on the North Carolina border. In one of the most socioeconomically disadvantaged counties in South Carolina. And Harbor Freight Tools is the anchor client for that. But it's handled record volumes in the last couple of months, pretty balanced between exports and imports. So we'll develop very differently than Greer. It doesn't have the density of activity that Greer has, but I think it's an important addition to our repertoire of facilities. And I think anytime you can use short haul rail, the way we look at it, that's a good thing to do. And we're able today, because of the inland ports, to do about 25% of our container volume via intermodal container rail, which is pretty exceptional considering that we don't have on dock rail.
Right. Yeah. Okay, great. So last week, SC Logistics released our 2020 economic impact study. So moving towards that, we'd love to get some of your thoughts on this. We saw, our employment number has grown from about 113,000 to 140,000 approximately in the last 3 years, with a total compensation of about 6.8 billion and an economic impact of approximately 37 billion. So from that, we specifically saw in regards to technology that the total expenditures made with tech specific to the logistics clustered has tripled over the past decade. In your opinion, what can we do to maybe keep innovating this supply chain and moving forward to the future?
Well, first of all, I mean, you can't get a better research economist than Joey Van Nessen, who did this study, and we work very closely with him. He does our economic impact study as well. And I think the supply chain sector, the logistics sector is a great, can be a great story for South Carolina. And I think that we have just really scratched the surface in it, because if you think about it, most of our growth in the last 10 years has been on the backs of advanced manufacturing. If you look at the growth in advanced manufacturing jobs and the growth in container volume of the port, they both doubled in 10 years' time. But I think we all would agree that BMW is not going to double the size of its plant in the future going forward. So we're making a very conscious transition into retail distribution. And retail distribution, as you know, is pretty labor intensive and provides sort of a middle ground of jobs between, say, hospitality and things of that nature and advanced manufacturing. So it really provides good job opportunities in a special segment of the labor market. So I believe that these numbers that you've seen here will continue to grow as we become more successful in retail distribution. And for us, that's the future. I mean, if you look in the whole Southeast today, if you read a magazine like Southern Business and Economic Development, they track all the economic development projects. And there are really two types of projects of prominence today. One is plastics manufacturing, which is in Texas and Louisiana, and the other is fulfillment centers or e-commerce distribution. So we're a bit late to the game there, but we'll get there. And it's just study cites the average wage is higher in this segment. And I think it's about creating good middle-class jobs where people can live close or can work close to where they live. One of the reasons that Dorchester County was very excited about the Walmart distribution center was that the people that work there won't have to leave Dorchester County and go to another county or another location to work. So we're excited about I think we will grow the logistics supply chain sector significantly over time. And I think that provides good jobs for people, it's something that many generations in the future will be able to aspire to.
Right. Yeah. So with the study and what Joey Van Nessen did, we looked at provider functions and embedded functions. And provider functions are logistics functions that exist primarily to transport raw materials to and from one firm to another, versus the embedded functions that we see that exists within a firm that's in service of that operation. So for example, a supply chain manager for a Walmart, for a BMW. Right. So on this, because of the increased reliance, we are actually seeing ourselves move further away from the provider functions to the embedded functions. And just kind of touching base on that, what do you see that meaning for you guys in terms of the port?
Well, I mean, I think for us, obviously, we have always been more focused on the provider functions. The embedded functions, obviously, for a BMW, for a Michelin, for a TTI, for people that have their corporate headquarters, Mercedes vans, Volvo, for those people. I mean, obviously, as those sort of facilities grow, you get more of those functions. So I agree with your conclusion. I still think the provider functions are probably going to grow more. That's my personal view. That may differ from what you concluded. And that's what the port's dependent on. I think what we've come to realize here and what we try to articulate to our people is that, look, I think Joey did a similar study for us. We're probably 10,000 people in the maritime community in South Carolina, most of which are in the the greater Charleston area. So the port's only 700 of those, but we're a catalyst for success for all of them. So we've got to make it possible for people to be successful truck drivers, for the ILA people to be successful, for distribution center workers to be successful, and for these people to create, assets that provide good jobs. And I think we're a catalyst for that. And what I will tell you, although you would think in the pandemic where our volume is down a little bit, I have never seen for us so many lucrative projects that we're working on today that have some really big potential impact. Walmart was one of them. I mean, Walmart we worked on for 4 years, basically. And it's not only the import distribution center, it's the transload building here at the Wando. We're importing sweet potato fries from Belgium, believe it or not. Who would import potatoes to the United States? I hope nobody tells President Trump that we're doing that, by the way. But anyway, so these big retailers, there's 15 or 20 big retailers that have won the day pretty much on omni-channel distribution, and that takes a lot of space. And we are actively engaged with most all of them. And I think their mission in life is they don't have enough facilities today, so they need more. So I mean, those would probably be more provider functions than embedded functions. I mean, the Walmart supply chain people we deal with are in Bentonville, Arkansas. They're not here.
Right.
But so I don't make as big a distinction maybe in that. I mean, I think that we can grow significantly, and I think retail distribution is probably more geared to that than even manufacturing is from just a supply chain perspective. It's very labor intensive to do a transload, right? And the problem we've had, I mean, this, you all have read about it. I mean, there is a whole shortage of labor to do transloading today, and a whole shortage of facilities, because a lot of that's temporary workforce. We need to try to convert some of that to more permanent workforce. But with all what happened with the unemployment and the sort of stimulus, which was a good thing by and large, I mean, it had to happen, but it did force some people to stay home that would have otherwise worked. There's no doubt about that. So I'm real bullish about the future here if we all take care of our business, and we business development's about focus. We have to be very focused on people whose needs match up with what we do well. And the one thing that I always tell people is that we have no unhappy customers in the port. I mean, the people that use our port get good service, get, productivity, reliability, and that's what supply chain management's all about. So very, 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 very optimistic. I think our future is bright because we've invested well. Our reputation's good, not just the port, the maritime community. The reputation's good. We got a shortage of truckers again all of a sudden. I mean, who would have thought? I mean, but if you look from April to now, our volume in September, we just report that today, is kind of, we had a record September by just a smidge, but still better. So we've been a lot of recovery, and I'm always very grateful that we're not in the airline industry or something like that, because that's just a disaster today.
Right. So kind of wrapping up on that, I know you've briefly touched about the retail and distribution centers. Maybe do a little bit of an expansion on, the plastic exports and some other the ways freight's moving through the Port of Charleston, and then we'll kind of go from there to any questions from the audience.
Sure. So, I mean, one of the hallmarks of the Southeast ports has always been we've been reasonably balanced in terms of containers, imports and exports. And that's important to the shipping lines. I mean, they don't want to move more empty exports than they do loaded exports. So we're always conscious as the population has grown in the Southeast, more activity here, the import percentages have kind of creeped up a little bit. So we've been very consequent about trying to develop export transloading. We had a couple of limitations there. Number one, we didn't have a lot of rail served buildings here to begin with. They just didn't exist in the right size and availability. So that was one thing that we had to overcome. And certainly we needed some private sector partners who could do this work, because we don't want to do it all ourselves. I mean, we're not we'd rather see the private sector do some of this transloading. So in addition to forest products and ag products, one of the big growth areas was plastics, because between 2018 and 2023, there's about 10 million tons of plastics production that's been added in the United States. And the lion's share of that's for export, because basically the domestic market's pretty much saturated. And we think about 2 million tons of that will come to the Southeast. That's about 100,000 containers. So we should be in a pretty good position to get 50 or 60,000 containers of exports. We've got 4 really good partners. Obviously, Frontier Logistics, who's been in Union Pier. They're opening a building in North Charleston. A&R Logistics is in Moncks Corner on the former nursery property. It's owned by the Intertech Group. A&R Bulk Pack, and then Mid-States Packaging. So to give you some perspective, we've got 9 packaging. When these 2 facilities open, we've got 9 packaging machines in the greater Charleston area. Savannah's got 3. So we should be able to take a disproportionate share. And obviously, some big question in the future about the next development is, are we going to ban fracking or not? I don't know if you got a clear answer in the debate last night on that topic. There doesn't seem to be a clear answer, actually, but let's hope they don't, because that will certainly hurt us. So this is a reasonably good way to get containers out of here. It's a sound business. These are very professional companies. You may read some content to the negative of that in some parts of the press, but that's just because some people love to hate the plastics for whatever reason. But they're good companies. They know what they're doing, and we have a capacity with these 4 companies of about 75,000 export containers a year. We've got another company that's interested in coming, and we want to do some of that on the Ridgeville property. So our goal in Ridgeville, where we have 70,000 import containers for Walmart, is to have some export transloading activity out there, which can reuse some of those containers, take some of the empty movements off the highway system. So I give a lot of credit to Paul McClintock, our chief commercial officer. He's really a textbook case of learning in industry and building relationships and really working out from what their needs were and finding a way to convince people to pay $3,000 or $4,000 a rail car to ship cargo produced 50 miles from the port of Houston over here to load on the ship. So incredible accomplishment. Pairs well with our import strategy, again, because we're able to create balance out of that.
Okay. We do have a couple of questions. We got one regarding the scheduling of trucks into the port. How does the port manage the scheduling of trucks? Does it utilize a scheduling software? And then we'll let you go with that. And then they wanted to know the average wait time for a truck.
So I'll take the last one first. So we measure and we report every month in our board meeting the wait, the sort of transaction time, pedestal to pedestal, and the queue time before. So most people don't measure the queue time, but it's really disingenuous not to measure it. And we do about 45 minutes for a dual transaction, including queue time. Now, if I had 50 truckers on the call today, I say this with the greatest respect, that's an average. So someone's going to have an outlier, right? Someone's going to have faster, someone's going to have slower, but that's an average. And I think the goal for a port is really an hour. That's kind of the standard that you should adhere to. What we have done to handle increased volume is we have extended our gate hours over time. When I started with the port, we were 8 to 5 with a lunch break. We're now 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. with no lunch break, and then we have Saturday hours as well. We have chosen not to implement an appointment system. The truckers don't really want to be tied to that. We haven't felt that we needed to do it. We do have some challenges. I will say that, about 50% of our transaction volume, and maybe it's a little bit less now, we've managed it better in the mornings, but say 45, 50% of our transactions come in about a 4 or 5 hour period in the middle of the day and right in the middle of lunchtime. And, that makes scheduling hard. But certainly we have stayed away from appointments, and we would like to do it as long as possible. In my way of thinking, if we ever had them, it would be on import containers mainly, because that's where most of our inefficiency is digging in the stack to get a container and not knowing what's coming at us the next day. But we want to make our main objective is to make it palatable for the truckers to work in this industry, to make a good living, and not give them more hassle than they already deal with today. It's tough to be a trucker, and we think if you have an appointment system, the one question you got to be able to answer is, what do you do when they don't make the appointment?
Right.
So what do I tell the BMW trucker when he doesn't make the appointment? He can't have his box to the next day. Well, guess what? That's not going to work. So we like the way we do it today. We hope to keep it that way. We have a night shift now where we can groom stacks and things of that nature to be ready. So if someone wants, I guess where I'm going with all this, we can do more planning. You know, we have a quick fix system. We have ways to work. And what we would encourage people is to really let us know if you've got 20 containers here and you don't care which one gets dispatched in what order, let us know. Because that way we're not digging through stacks to get, if all 20 have to go out the same day, let's just get them in a peel off pile and let's move them that way. So there's a lot we can do to be efficient, but we're already pretty efficient today.
Okay. Another question, has Wando needed to expand their apron for more containers, and how big is the apron for the Leatherman terminal?
Well, no, we had to redo the whole wharf. But that had more to do with strength of piling, sort of degradation of concrete over time. So we have not expanded the wharf. We put a new fendering system in because the ships were bigger, so they absorbed the shock of a big ship coming up against the dock. We are reconfiguring some buildings on the dock. We've got some on-terminal parking that's kind of an annoyance, really. It's just a legacy thing. But they're not significantly different, and the aprons are not significantly different. I mean, we've got 100-foot gauge cranes, and you never have enough backland area, the land hatch covers and stuff like that. So it's tight up there, but it's manageable. What we did do, we had one road system up there, so you had a lot of mixture of yard trucks going to ships and then road trucks. So we built a second road up there, so hopefully the road trucks stay on the one furthest away from the ship and the yard trucks stay on the one closest to the ship. And then as we reconfigure the Wando terminal, we put a middle road in between longitudinally in the terminal, which allows trucks to not have to go down. The last thing we want is a truck to go down to the waterfront when we're working, 13, 15 cranes on ships, basically.
Okay. Those are the main questions that we got. So, and we're, ending right on time. Really wanted to thank you, Jim, for being a part of our first webinar series that the council is doing, and hope you have a great week, and Monday comes back with a victory over the weekend for you with Tennessee.
Thanks, Taylor, for all your organization does. It's really an asset for our industry, and it's nice to see so many familiar names and friends on this call. So I appreciate all the interest and support of the port.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.